Hi, welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Karisa DeLay, and
I am Jaime Vendera,
all
author.
right, we're back for another episode.
I brought a new water jug.
Listen, do you have a collection? Like, is there
I do, but
Yeah?
my wife is worse. Like we got a whole two cabinets full. Oh, I need another one. Why? You got one mouth. But I can say the same thing.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean,
Like, really? You say that to her when you have like 17?
I will, but she's got 117. Seriously, it's insane.
Poor Diane. I'm gonna vouch for her. I feel like you're gonna throw her under the bus for this, and it's probably you that has taught her to drink so much, and therefore she is.
You really don't drink that much.
Yeah, oh, she just likes the aesthetic of the water bottle?
I think she does, because she's like, I need to drink more water. Yeah, you
Maybe
do.
if I get another water bottle, I'll drink more.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, man, if I had it, it'd be perfect for the ice, and I like it cold. And this is only 1.5 liters, and she probably don't even drink this in a day.
Only. That literally looks like a mini me from Austin Powers.
It does. It does. Looks like a baby gallon. It's my baby.
My little baby. Oh my gosh. All right. Let's actually talk about something pertaining to writing today.
Oh.
So we got a really good topic.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, conflict and storytelling. So we're going to focus a lot on fiction writing today because it's the conflict. And we're going to talk about some movies, some books, TV shows. I've listed the ones in the notes that I wanted to do.
Okay.
So we can talk about some of those.
What notes?
Oh.
I'm messing with you. You asked right before
You actually studied the notes today.
I did for like 10 minutes. That was it, though. I read through them.
Appreciate that, Jamie. Appreciate that.
I don't remember it, though. That was like a half an hour ago.
Oh, you're funny. All right. So today we're going to talk about conflict and storytelling. To start, we're going to kind of break it down. We're going to talk about understanding the conflict, which we'll talk about define what a conflict is, the types of conflicts. We're going to talk about how to craft compelling conflict. And then we're going to kind of go into like the resolution of the conflict. And then we'll give some of our examples, essentially, and then, go from there. All right. To start off, you want to define conflict for us?
Yeah, it's the struggle between opposing forces. I'm reading Chris's notes, so I get this exactly right. Conflict is the struggle between opposing forces that drive the narrative. It can be internal with a character or external between characters or between a character and their environment. And actually, I think I've written in all these. I mean, if you think about any compelling story, there's always some type of conflict. Like even in Crisis Artifact, there's multiple conflicts. The main character, Cesar Guevara, is a recovering alcoholic. His family had died. He was an archaeologist when they were on an expedition, and he watched his daughter die. And but it's a supernatural type of book, so there's more forces, and all of a sudden there's this cataclysm, there's earthquakes, hurricanes, so he's fighting also against the environment, and he has a way to stop it.
So with that, with that, what type of conflict would you put that in? With like man versus self and man versus nature?
It's actually man versus self with man versus environment, because it's so unique, because it's not unique. Someone else has told this story, but here he is like kind of like a superhero, the underdog that you wouldn't really expect. But since he's fighting conflict within himself, he can't really unleash what needs to happen to prevent basically the earth from dying. So it's a struggle.
Well, and here's the thing, though. In your stories, you don't have to have just one type of conflict. You can have multiple overlapping conflicts. So with that one, with this types of conflict, you can have like the man versus man. I'm going to say human versus human.
Yep.
A direct conflict of characters. Often, like it's typically the protagonist and the antagonist. But like with yours, it's the character, the human, and well, it doesn't have to be human to actually like, because we have stories of aliens. So man versus self, that internal conflict you're talking about with a character that he struggles with his own issues, his desires, beliefs, decisions that he's made in the past. That's the conflict with that one. Where he's also struggling with man versus nature, which is another type of conflict, which is the conflict between the character and the natural forces and the desire and the disasters that have faced on Earth.
Yeah,
so that's
I think I love writing in conflict mode. I mean, I try to stay in the conflict. It's like even Phoenix Earth. Here we are trying to re-terraform Earth, and and also facing racism from humans going to another planet and crossbreeding and then coming back. But I mean, if you
Well,
look
yeah.
at any comic book, I mean, that's man versus man. Super man versus Lex Luthor. There's always that battle between the hero and the villain.
Yeah, but do you think like with comic books too, and with what you were talking about, Phoenix Earth, that's more of like a also man versus society. So that's where you're like they're battling against not only their nemesis, but you're also battling against these societal injustices. Like you talk about racism and things like that you've talked in some of your stories. The injustices and the norms that are in society, your character's battling against it.
Yeah, I mean, see, you took me on to. I'm trying to remember the name of this film. I can't remember the actor. He's like, well, all right. Who is
Matthew
that?
McConaughey.
McConaughey. Remember the movie he was in
I don't
with?
watch many McConaughey movies.
Oh, I can't remember the name of this other actor. Really skinny. He played Incredible Hulk in one of the movies.
Edward
And
Norton.
Edward Norton. Remember the movie? And he was like, he was like mentally challenged. He's like, it wasn't me. And then at the end, he's like in jail. He got off. He was up for a murder. And then I think
Is that one of the? Is that a movie? Is that a TV series?
That's a movie. No, it was a movie,
Oh.
and I'm pretty sure it was McConaughey. And and he got Edward Norton off of this. And at the end, he's like, "Wait a minute, you really did do it." And he's like, "I was wondering how long it take to figure out I'm not some idiot, but it was too late. He got him off." So
Okay.
yes,
Yeah. No, I again, I would watch movies, but I don't watch a lot of stuff. So that's probably something that my husband's sitting there saying it's this movie, and he's going to tell me when he's watching it. This is the movie you guys were talking about.
yeah, because I can't remember. I can't remember yesterday. I don't even know what I watched on Netflix last night. So,
all right. So we've listed like the main types of conflict. The one we did not list that was on my list was man versus technology, which is more like the Terminator.
Exactly.
You know, AI.
That's exactly took it out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was thinking. Or The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I love those movies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, which is so man versus technology. That's the conflict arising from the complexities or dangers of technology and advances. So kind of where we are in the world today and with AI. Speaking of AI, so when we did the episode on AI, I remember we downloaded like different AI apps and we kind of played around with them to see like how do they work, what's their limitations. Well, speaking on that, one of the things I learned was AI has a layout. I don't know if you noticed this, but
No.
AI has a specific layout that it'll do an overview of what you asked in the question. It will list and itemize things very specifically, not expound on them, but they'll it'll give almost like a small summary of each topic, and then at the very end, it'll in conclusion summarize what it just said. So it has an outline. So it's in its algorithm how to lay it out. Every time I'd ask a question, I see how it lays it out. So I can always tell if someone is using AI in a comment. Well, literally my assignment for my class I'm finishing up at ASU, a student, the professor asked a question, and then the same question is asked 4 times, and you have to use the question and answer it as a conflict. Then you have to answer it as a solution, like a problem, how you're solving the problem. Third is a rethink, like, okay, now that I've said this is kind of how I'm reevaluating the question. And then the fourth one is, okay, my final thoughts. Here's actually the truth of what I feel is going to happen. So, same question, 4 different stories, or 4 different ways to look at it. This guy literally went in there and answered it from AI. Didn't even try to hide it. Like, literally, it's like AI wrote the whole thing.
I hope the professor called him out in class.
So the professor called people out on not answering the question and saying, please make sure you looked at the prompt. There is a specific way to do this. But I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, this is so AI. This is literally word for word. So I typed it into the little chat box that I have just to ask the question, and it literally came up with almost the exact same thing. Yes. Yes. I was like,
how to fail a class. But
right?
you
Like,
got to add to the list of all the words we make up. I like back in the 80s, it was like gag me with a spoon. You need to add this is so AI. Because
that's a statement, yeah. This
this is
is
so
like so AI. I'm writing that this is so AI.
AI. All
I
right.
wanted to passively aggressive say that in the response because you're allowed to respond to students. So instead, I had,
You had
internet
AI
etiquette.
rewrite it. What you were going to
I
say.
should have. I should have had. But AI told me this. Just like at me next time, bro. I'm kidding. That was terrible. That was so cringy. All right, let's move on. Back to the notes again.
Yes, crafting compelling conflict.
Craft. Speaking of crafting, I love the movie Craft. The Craft. That was
Oh,
one
I
of my.
do
I
too.
love that movie. Oh, anyways,
I love how
crafting.
I dyed my beard kind of white today, just for all of you. I made it white.
Oh
I'll
my
let it.
gosh.
I'll let it grow back out black next week when it's coal black or purple or blue. I don't know why I like saying that. I said it before we started. All right. I'll shut up now.
All
All
right,
right. I love the craft. Yes.
crafting compelling conflict. All right, so this one I have about 6 breakdowns of ways to craft compelling conflict. I have like establish clear stakes, develop relatable characters, create tension and escalation. Use conflict to drive character development, which I spelled development wrong. My bad. I didn't spell that right. Not that it matters, but it's in the
We need
notes.
to add that to development.
Listen, I'm a terrible speller.
We need to develop men because we're children.
Yeah, I'm terrible at spelling. So literally, I had my husband go over certain things, or he'll say, "Hey, by the way, you posted this and this is spelled wrong." I'm like, "Thank you."
I
I'm
do
not
it
like,
every
"Oh my
day.
gosh, don't tell me that." Like, I'm like, "Oh, thank you," because I'm a terrible speller. And it's not that I'm not technically I could spell certain words, but sometimes when I get to typing, my G turns into a C because they're so
Yeah,
close. Things
I
like
do
that.
the same thing. I have to go back and reread my post 3 or 4. I'll go back and edit what I catch, read it again, and because I always have 15 typos. So,
Mm-hmm.
but listen, these 6, because you got incorporate multiple dimensions of conflict, surprise, and subvert expectations. You need to watch this episode and listen several times because
Yeah.
this is serious stuff here. I
All
mean,
right,
if you
let's
want to
talk
pull,
about serious
you
business, people.
you got to pull people with conflict. So let's go one by one.
Yeah, one by one. So let's go back to the top. Let's go to establish clear stakes. This is where you highlight what the character stands to lose or gain. A lot of times when you're writing a story, that's your kind of like your drive towards the plot twist is like what is the gain from this, or what are they going to get if something happens? What are they going to lose? What are the stakes? You want your audience invested in what these character outcomes are. You want them to be somewhat relatable too. So establish what is at stake for your characters in the plot twist.
Yep.
Okay.
So something simple. I was watching something the other day, and there was this scientist who invented some kind of like bomb with a virus in it, and he had it strapped to his body, and he was going to blow himself up. And they're like, "Why are you doing this? Like, you don't understand. They got my family. If I don't do this and kill all these people, my wife and my daughter are going to die. So I got to sacrifice myself and 100 people in this building." So there's some serious conflict.
Age-old question, and we've said this before: the one for the multitude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that person in that situation would have chose the one because they're choosing their small number of family over the multitude. So they made that decision. Yeah. So next, develop relatable characters. Here, your motivation should resonate with the audience. You're fostering this empathy, engagement. This is where I was saying when you decide what's at stake, make sure your audience understands how important that stake is. Like, make it something that I feel like, oh, this is gut wrenching. Oh, I can totally be pulled into this. Like, even if you have mythological characters, in this fiction story, they can still have relatable challenges.
I've never watched Dexter, but I've heard it's like really good.
Oh, same, absolute same.
So,
I think I watched one episode.
but here's a serial killer, but everyone I know that's watches like, I so love him, and they're behind him on these murders because how he goes about it.
Because he's taking out bad people. People can relate to taking out a bad person, not an innocent. Yeah, so that's where you can draw that in.
Yeah, and it don't necessarily have to be that. It's like even when I made Cesar Guevara alcoholism, I've had people in my family who were alcoholics, and it's like, okay, I can relate to that. I know people be like, man, I've been there, or my family's died, my daughter's died, what kind of pain would I go through, to get her back, or a Powder, if you ever saw that movie, here's this.
Years ago. Oh my gosh,
Yes, and here's
that's
this.
memories. I was a long time ago when I watched that one.
This human is so evolved, and you see him getting picked on, and
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end, the people picking on him realize, like, wow, what an amazing person, and I'm so sorry. So pull them in. You want to feel it at your heartstrings. You want to be able to connect to those characters.
Right. Yeah. Let's see, tension and escalation. So here is something that should build. This is something that should build over time. You shouldn't just now sometimes if you if you Tarantino it, you are going to get that, like, here's the instant conflict shown in your face, and then you're going to reverse it, go back in time. That's not something you want to do all the time, but that's something can be done well if you throw a high tension situation in the beginning, and then your audience is like, oh, what's happening? I have to find out why. When people on TV shows will do this opening, and then they're like, okay, now 14 days ago, where this started. Now that's a situation where you can throw a tension level in at first, and you're like, how did we get to this tension level? Now let's backtrack.
I felt like watching Lost every episode. Well, even similar with what is the zombie show? What is wrong with me? The main. No, not. Oh, I love. Did you say The Strain?
Mm-hmm.
I love that show.
You're talking about Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yeah. Walking Jamie. I love those shows that leave you at the end of an episode, and you're like, your heart's racing and your tension. You're like, where's this going? Mm-hmm. So Lost definitely did that to me until the very end. Then I was disappointed, but
yeah. So in a typical situation, aside from what we're talking about, you want to start gradually, and you want to add in little tension places. You want to
check out Minecraft. For those not watching the video,
my controller turned off. Yeah.
Use conflict to drive character development. C. I like how you updated that.
Oh my gosh! Listen, whatever.
I love it. It's like me.
Development with a C at the end.
It's easy to get me back. You just take screenshots of our texting and say, "Oh yeah, Jamie, what about this? Yeah. What about what in the world are you trying to say to me?
What were you trying to say here? Exactly." Yeah. All right. Yeah, so you use conflict to drive your character development. So these are really good ways to find filler moments when you're creating a story arc. Conflict should not only challenge the character, but also lead them and grow them. So with you have a love story kind of superimposed into the storyline, it may not be your main thing, but if you want to create little reasons for their love, why they're connected. Maybe this is a strange character. Maybe you have a killer and you're like, how can this person fall in love? Maybe you want to create a reason why they're this love story is there. I don't know.
I know you want to say Twilight.
I have it listed. Thank you very much. It's down at the bottom. We'll talk about it later.
Actually, I love that movie. I love the movies. I'm sorry.
The books are good too.
Yeah. Shoot me.
Actually, look, I've got my Twilight necklace on now that you say that. This is the crest of the Collins. You're welcome. Okay, so when you're using conflict, as characters are confronted with the obstacles, they should evolve in meaningful ways. So don't just throw these things and there's no evolution to your character. You want it to be like, oh yeah, they went through these things, but they're not better.
Yeah. Here's why they went through them. Here's what happened in the end.
Right. Or give the reason why they're so harsh, or why is this person so, standoffish? Why are they so secretive? Why do they speak this way? Why do they have an intense vocabulary versus someone who doesn't? What is their background? You
see that a lot. I showed the other day, this kid was a bully, and then come to find out, not that it makes it right, but he was getting severely beaten at home. Or the bottom of his feet were getting burnt with cigarettes. So, then he was turning around, taking it out on someone else. But then those two boys became friends, and he was able to get away from his father. So
I do that in real life, though. I feel sometimes I will, when someone and my kids are like, that's not an excuse. And it's not an excuse.
It's not
but sometimes
an excuse.
I try to understand where someone's coming from. Like, this is why they are. Like, if someone's in a toxic environment all the time, that's all they know. So when they go into real world away from their toxicity, they don't know how to act non-toxic. So, like I said, it's not an excuse, but it is
It's
a
programming. Yeah.
context. Yeah, it's a context to who that person is in real life. So, yeah. Okay, incorporating multiple dimensions of conflict. So this is where you're layering different styles of conflict to enrich the story, like we were talking earlier, where you can be not only just, it doesn't have to be just man versus man, it can be man versus man, which, you know, there's also man versus technology. Like you can literally have these incorporated in a lot of situations, especially if you did an alien movie where you have man versus like these aliens, but at the same time they're maybe fighting the technology on the ship. The AI on the ship is taking over, so not only you have to shut the ship down, but you have to battle this AI that's on, or this alien that's on the ship as well. So you can have all kinds of different things that you could be like overlapping.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, it's important to watch this episode several times, take these down, because I would loosely plot this out. I don't do that. We both know that. I just run with it, but I'm a pantser. But,
Yep.
you know, it would be nice if, like, okay, here's the overall arcing story. So it's not just AI, but also technology for AI. Then I'm fighting the aliens. So make sure you know where you're going with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, the next one that I have listed is surprise and subvert expectations. So keep the audience engaged by introducing unexpected twists. I love this one because this is what I like to do. I like to throw in little like, moments. I like those little moments
Yep.
in the story where people are like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. That was so unexpected."
Well, speaking of that, your latest novel, Canvassed.
I know, aren't you excited?
I know, especially after the talks we've had recently. It's like, I mean, I was really like, you know, this. Like, we like certain genres. I'm not into murder or that type of thing. My wife is. She listens to them on the podcasts every day. But when you unveiled where you wanted to go with this, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, yes.
Here we are.
Yes.
And I feel like, honestly, deep down, that was my struggle. So for those listening and who have listened to the evolution of Canvas and some of the things I've talked about, I have not been very diligent about writing because I felt like not only am I busy, but I'm like not motivated. And typically I like to write in the genre of the supernatural or, you know, science fiction in the realism. What?
Don't give it all away.
I'm not giving anything away.
Whew.
No, but I am going to throw it out there. Here's your plot twist for Canvas that I am changing this, keeping the story.
Yep.
But I'm adding the paranormal aspect to it. I'm gonna shift, and it was just something that was nagging at me, and I literally, when I have these moments, I text Jamie. I'm like, all right, I'm throwing this out. He's just like, we talked on the phone, and I'm like, okay, here's my thoughts, and he's like, yes. And then I thought about it more now that he was like totally on board with this. Me too. I was like, okay, and this is the backstory of this character, and like, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, remind me after this podcast to remember what I need to tell you right now that I can't tell you on the podcast. I probably won't remember then, but maybe I will.
Give me a clue word.
Same universe.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right, let's move on here. So, well, like I said, so surprise, oh my gosh,
Price.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't know.
Surprise expectations. Let's just go with that one.
That's the fast ever. Okay.
Yeah. So this, like, again, this is the twist that we're talking about. This is where you can change your antagonist's methods. You can find some kind of revelation about your character's true intentions and their motivations. And you can also shift alliances where you're like, I thought this was this way. And then you're like, no, these two just teamed up. And you're like, ooh, this is good. This could be good. It's going to be good.
Especially, I like it when characters come together and they're like polar opposites, or they hate each other, but they have to work together. So then here's more conflict.
I like those. Yes. I really like that when you see two people that are like on oil and water, and you're like, all right, we're gonna find common ground. Yeah, we're gonna work together, and we're gonna solve this.
Then I want to kill you afterwards, but.
All right, let's move on to now the topic in the umbrella of resolving the conflict. So resolving the conflict, you know, we have, I think I broke this down into just two main things. where there's one, you provide a satisfying resolution, which is what I like to do, even though it's unexpected. It's satisfying. I do not like things where I'm like, oh, I hate how this ended.
Yep.
Yeah. Game of Thrones.
Yep. Absolutely.
When we talk about things that we hate how they ended, it's always going to be Game of Thrones.
Then it's going to be Lost for me.
Oh yeah. Well, Lost wasn't. I feel like Lost was just like, we all knew it was coming, and they're like, no, it's not. No, it's not, and then it was.
Yeah, and then but it was just like, could you not have made a better ending? Let's just put the cork back in. I'm like.
Like all the end, and literally they had the beginning and they had the end. Everything else was just filler.
Yep.
I mean, and that's just what sucks is where Game of Thrones, it had all of the uptake, the climbing to a really amazing ending, and then it's like you left us at the top of the city at winter with the dragons flying off.
And you talk about provide satisfying resolutions. This is not just for your company. This is for everything. And I was talking about this with Lost. The one thing that really pissed me off is they had the young boy on the island and his father, and I can't remember his name, but the bald-headed dude took over, was like really mentoring that young
Locke or something like that.
John Locke, and then the young boy, and the next thing you know, they get this kid off the islands. And this was like like, you're going to be huge. You're a big part of this. And then he's off the island, and a couple of seasons later, one of the other characters gets off the island for a minute, and they see him where he's going to school or something. And I'm like, okay, you said he was a huge part of this, and then boom, he's off the show. And then one scene 2 seasons later, like, oh yeah, hi, I'm in school. See ya. There was it was stupid. No resolution. If you have a character, even a minor character, make sure you resolve what was their purpose.
It should be a satisfying resolution. It shouldn't just be like like you give me all this and that's what you left me with.
Exactly.
And when I wrote Four Rivers, I remember my friend Sherry. I had her read the ending. And she said to me, I wanted the constructive criticism. She said, I'm going to be honest that I feel hopeless with this ending. I feel like I've went through this stuff with the characters and I feel like very hopeless. Like her decision was just like out of disparity. And I'm like, okay, I got to reword that because that's not the feeling I want you to have. So it helped me by letting me know that what I had left the reader with was unsatisfying. So I could reword it. And then when I reworded it, she's like, yes, now I feel like there's hope. And that's what I wanted. And I'm like,
you say that, Karisa, and I'm fine with that, but there's times, well, like, was it Empire Strikes Back, and at the end, Luke Skywalker got his hand cut off. And I'm like, I felt destroyed. Or there was the Deathly Hallows, parts 1 and 2. At the end of part 1, and they're out there.
How do you spell Hallows, by the way?
Hallows, maybe? I don't know. I spell it wrong. I don't know.
I thought it was Deathly Hallows.
Maybe it is. I just see him saying Hallows something. Hallows.
Probably wrong. I don't know.
Anyway, like I felt like despaired, and I felt like empty, and like this didn't resolve anything for me. But it was in such a way that I was like, I can't wait to the next movie because I'm destroyed. Where's this going? So
that's how I felt like with the death of Snape. I was very sad when Snape died, knowing who he truly was, because when you get the tears and Harry finally sees all the it was always.
Yep.
That whole always came to like this impact with those tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so deep on so many levels. And then you start to rethink the entire process of the movie and books through again. So yes, so the conflict should have a satisfying resolution, whether it's through triumph, through loss, through compromise. The way that conflicts resolve significantly impact the audience's experience and their perception of your story. So.
And you followed up with leave some questions unanswered. Now, when you're thinking about this, do you mean, say you wrote a series, and I can understand leaving questions unanswered from book to book, but how do you feel about when the entire series is done and there may be 3 or 4 questions? Do you like that? That drives me nuts.
I feel like not everything has to be answered because this is where your audience chit-chats. This is where your audience is like, oh, what about this? Like, I don't know that. So then they read it again and they kind of break it down more and
And they try to
try to
figure it out.
yeah, I mean, and you can lightly answer it already. Like, I feel like you can put a rhetorical answer in there somewhere that your audience can decide for themselves something. Sometimes they don't want to know everything. Sometimes they want to internally decide the answer for something, like small things. But I definitely feel like the bigger questions do need to be answered and not left hanging unless you have another book coming. With Crystal Gate, I left off literally everybody that had read it told me like, oh my gosh, I need Four Rivers. When is this going to be done? I need to know what happens. Like, you literally left this character here and you left that character there. And so with Four Rivers, I picked up exactly where I left off and went in and directly, like, full force, because the second book you can go in full force because you've already started the climax in the first book. So yeah, the conflict was right there. It was intense and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I need to know what's going on, what's happened to this person. And then, like, with your epilogue, you can kind of like dangle some answers essentially if you're going into a next series, I feel like. But you can
Yeah, I do. I will say it drives me nuts when everything's not answered. But I do like when I see fans be like, "Oh, you know why? Because they're really not dead, and they ended up here, and this is why." Because if you read it in book 3, and it's like it's not, it could be true, could not be true, And I'm sure some authors like to set it up like that to make them seek it out, and I think that's where fan fiction comes from. Like, oh, it wasn't resolved enough for me, so let me write out this character development.
All right. So the next topic, and I put a few in here, and maybe this will spark your imagination as well. But I put some examples of literature and media where there's different conflicts. So I broke it down into conflict type and a kind of an analysis of the type. So let's go with the classic first, Pride and Prejudice.
My wife is going to love this.
Hi, Diane. This is for you. Yeah. So this is that internal conflict versus the social conflict. For those who've not read Pride or Prejudice or watched the movie, it's very good because you have these two characters. One, this social person who's distant, who doesn't want to find love because of the status quo. And you have these main conflicts resolved around Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And this is something my kid has read, and I watched the movie. And I'm sure the book was way better, but like, yeah, this is a good one. This is one where it's like the conflict resolves around the struggle against the societal expectations and her prejudice against this man that she thinks he's some way when he turns out not to be. This conflict leads to her personal growth as she learns to reevaluate her judgments. Social conflict showcases class distinction affecting her family and relationships. I really liked the movie, but it was a classic love story where it's like you're such this person, and as the audience, you're trying to like mentally tell the Elizabeth, he's not that way. I hope you can see this. And then when she gets to see that side of him, you're like, oh, thank you. So
I love that you chose the Shawshank Redemption, mainly because that's where they hold Incarceration Festival. So I've been up and toward the prison, but God, I don't even know how you pronounce his last name. I don't even Defresny. I don't even remember it. But we had this guy Andy who got thrown into jail. And then you had that corrupt prison warden. And surely everyone's watched this movie by now. And so he's doing his taxes and the books, and he's cheating. So all of a sudden he has this conflict internally because he's got to maintain hope and dignity in this harsh environment, and that basically drives the narrative. But there's also this conflict influences his journey from a wrongfully imprisoned man to a beacon of hope for other inmates, culminating in I'm reading Chris's notes now, culminating in a powerful message about resilience and redemption. But look how, the inmates and some of the guards came to him like, hey, I got to put my kid through college. How can you help me with my taxes?
Right.
Or when he was getting books he was trying to better the prison, and he kept writing, and they finally started sending books. So though he had to deal with this douchebag, who thankfully ended up in prison himself, this corrupt warden.
And the main plot twist is a spoon.
Yes. slightly digging. I'm like, how for so many years,
yes, yes,
and then his
yes. And the thing
partner
is,
gets.
when you're reading, I didn't read it, but when the storyline, even in the books and in the movie, only because I looked into this, there's small bits that let you know what's happening, but you don't know what's happening, like the dropping of the rock
Rocks.
side,
Yeah.
like it's just a little bit
Yeah.
small. Like it was a long plan. There was
Yeah.
a long end game. Yeah, it was very good, very
Can I
good.
have a poster in my room? Sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I like stories like that where the problem isn't solved instantly by a quick thought of judgment, but the character has thought this out long in advance, and it's the long game. I like those long game versions of storylines. All right. So I put this one in there because I try to pick something from each one of my family members. So I had, of course, um, Pride and Prejudice for one of the twins. I had Shawshank Redemption because my husband and I like that movie. I mean, he really likes that movie. I did The Office for the other twin because she likes the Office. They all watch The Office.
I met Dave Kegner.
They all watch The Office, but like truly, it was one of them that started watching it with my husband. But the U.S. version,
Yeah.
which interestingly, when we were in London and you put it on there, there's episodes like on Netflix over there, but like the US version, and so
I didn't even know they had another version.
well, the original version was from I think London.
Wow.
The
Cool.
original, like this, yeah, the Office US version is like it is like a remake from the US like style, whatever. So this is the conflict type for this one is the interpersonal and the situational conflicts. Now, I am not a situational conflict lover. I do not like things that make me feel awkward when I'm watching it. So some of the things that happen that my husband finds hilarious, I'm like, oh, this is because if I was thinking of this in reality, I would be so uncomfortable. So I don't like situational comedies sometimes like that where there is that conflict.
I dig it. I've never watched it. I've watched a few episodes, and like your husband, I was laughing.
Yeah. For those who've not watched it, The Office, so it's rooted in these dynamics of a workplace, you know, Dunder Mifflin, and then later Saber. Relationships among workers, particularly romantic tension between, you know, Jim and Pam, and it serves as a primary interpersonal conflict. So Michael Scott's, oh my gosh, his unorthodox management style creates these situational conflicts with a team, and it's always so sometimes for me cringy. I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this like? Yeah, yeah. So that's just I had to put it on there. I was trying to put things in there that I felt related to all the things that might represent our family.
Well, I'll let you take the next one too, because I know this is for you. Because I can see the one below that. It's definitely for me,
for my youngest, and for my oldest. So the three of us, we have all read the books. We've all watched the movies of us three. So this is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I feel like I should be talking like in a low lit.
I feel like I should be sparkly.
Not yes, but show you wear your diamonds all over your skin. Okay, so this has three types of conflict. You have your man versus man, you have man versus self, and man versus nature, or I should say vampire. But there's also, well, technically man versus man, because I mean, honestly, this is from the perspective of Bella. So it's the girl versus herself and what she wants. You have
conflict between Jacob and Edward.
Yeah, there's, you know, like, yeah, the dynamic of that. The central conflict, of course, revolves around Bella Swan, who chooses between her feelings for Edward, who's a vampire, and Jacob, like we talked about. But also there's this, aside from the love triangle, there's her interpersonal desire to be a vampire, not because she's in love, but because she feels like that's where she truly fits. That's who she truly wants to be, even outside of being in love with a vampire. She wants to be a vampire for her own stumbling through life. So yeah, so she's kind of like struggling with her identity and the implications of being in this supernatural world. So, all right, I've had my piece with saying that.
Breaking Bad, you know, I was like, why does everyone want to watch this show? I'm going to watch about some meth drug dealer. And then, man, I just got involved, and I even felt for Walter White. So we have man versus self and man versus society. I'm going to read your notes, and then we'll talk about. So Walter White, who is the main character, he has this transformation from a mild-mannered chemistry teacher to a drug kingpin, and it's fueled by his own internal conflict over his self-worth, and of course, they have a lot of financial fears, with losing a house and stuff like that. So his choices lead to escalating external conflicts with rival criminals, law enforcement, and ultimately his own family. This duality of conflict shapes Walter's character arc dramatically, illustrating the complexities of morality and the consequences of one's choices. The spiraling conflicts reveal the darkness within him and the impact of his decisions on those he loves. Yes, this is a roller coaster of a ride, and you start out, he has fear, like, I gotta make money. We're going to lose this, we're going to do that. And then it gets to the point where, it's just coming in, and, suddenly murder becomes, it's just a daily thing. It's no big deal. If somebody I know gets shot right in front of me, or the cops are chasing me, or the DEA, or the next drug lord's after me. So every episode was like that. It was like, fighting like I'm a good person, but I got to make these drugs. Oh shit, somebody's chasing me. I want to die today. It was just the most insane thing that just pulled me in. I never would have watched something like that. That's nothing that interests me, but it was that conflict back and forth constantly. Same thing with Sons of Anarchy. There was just that, I felt for Jax. It's like, oh, you're such a horrible person. You all need to die for selling drugs and guns. But even in the end, I was like, wow, you're so pulled into this character, and you feel for Walter White and Jax. And I never thought I'd feel for the bad guy,
So full disclosure, I put this one on there for the hubby and a couple of the kids who watch this. I think there's one currently watching it. Or maybe she just finished. I'm not sure. So my husband wanted me to watch this. He's like, this is the best show on TV, like at the time. And everybody was watching it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I said, when I'm done with Crystal Gate, I'll watch it. When I was writing Crystal Gate. And so I made that promise, and I kept my promise, and I watched it. I don't know if it's because I accidentally seen the ending. I did not like Breaking Bad. I did not like it. I didn't like the conflict. I didn't like Walter. I liked Jesse, but I did not like the show. I liked Better Call Saul, but I did not like, I don't know. I was not drawn into liking Walter White or his decisions. I felt like I just didn't like it.
And that's fine, because let's be honest, he made horrible decisions. So, in the beginning, I'm like, he went from a decent human to the scum of the earth, but I was still pulled in by him.
Yeah, and a lot of people were. And I really like Jesse, like I said, and that's probably the only reason I really kept watching. Other than the promise I made, but at the same time, this wasn't my show. This just wasn't the thing that I was like, oh yeah, So but I put it in there for the people that like that in my family, and that's why it's there. I tried, like I said, to pick the ones that.
No, that's cool, because we're going on to one that I really didn't like. I've tried.
You didn't like Hunger Games?
No, I haven't even finished. I've watched
Suzanne Collins. I liked it.
But she did. Remember, there was another movie she had out. She did one movie. It was about an alien.
Susan Collins?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's look that one up.
Yes.
Read, or you look that up, and I'm gonna read this here.
All right. Yeah.
Because I don't know which one that you're talking about. So, all right. The Hunger Games. This is the conflict of man versus society and man versus self. So this is basically about, we learn the character Katniss Everdeen. She lives in this society where there's like technically 13, but 12 areas that are kind of like a result of a rebellion. So Katniss Everdeen is she's grappling with this oppression of this regime of the Capitol, which, leading to her decision to fight for survival and for her loved ones. So this internal conflict that we're seeing in Hunger Games represents a rebellion against society and injustice. So when we can relate to that sometimes, when we're feeling like someone needs to stand up and, fight for the masses. She has her own internal struggles, of course, and with her identity and things. Hold on here. Because there's also that love triangle between Peeta and Gale, and the weight of her choices for that. These conflicts shape her into this reluctant hero, ultimately, which she didn't want to be the hero. She wasn't doing this to be the hero. She was doing this to save her sister, essentially, Prim. and ultimately influences the series by pressing into these themes of sacrifice, survival, and resistance. So I feel like, and I heard a lot of different people saying, oh, the books, if I was to grade them, would be an A, a B, and a C, like how they progress book-wise, which ones were their favorites. But I really liked the movies. But that's just me.
I may be wrong. Maybe it's a Stephanie Meyer's book.
Oh, you're talking about The Host?
The Hosts.
That's Stephanie Meyer.
Okay, yeah.
The book was way better. But the book
I
was one
thought
of
the
those
movie
ones...
was like generic, but I really liked it. I don't know why I thought it was Susan Collins. And I mean, I've watched a couple of the Hunger Games movies, and they were cool. I just never got pulled in, so I don't hate them or anything. I should probably sit down and watch them all.
All right. This last one is kind of like in that, it's in that public, I wanted to throw a public domain one in there. So Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. This is one that...
Oh, I thought you meant by Leonardo DiCaprio and who was it? Remember the movie he did like 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Who was the girl who was in that movie?
I don't remember.
I'm telling you, I need memory pills.
No, that was just so long ago.
Claire Danes. There we go.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have never guessed that. All right, so this is the conflict between man versus society, which is the family conflict, and basically man versus his fate, essentially. This is something that most people should know, the love story and the ending of Shakespeare, where the poison's only supposed to last so long and appear that they're dead, and then, whatever. Yeah. So that was like that major twist that Shakespeare like literally did well.
Didn't see that coming. I felt like when they made the movie The Blue Lagoon, that they were almost hinting towards Romeo and Juliet. Because it was right, it wasn't the same concept, but at the end when they were going to eat the berries, they're going to die, and then of course the ship comes by. I'm like, oh, they were so close. Like at least they got saved. And and Romeo and Juliet. I even remember reading that in high school. That's probably
why I chose Romeo and Juliet, because in the Hunger Games, right after I put the Hunger Games on the list of notes, I thought of the end with Katniss and Peeta, where one of them has to eat the berries to die, and she's like, "No, let's both eat them," because she knew, right? So it's not exactly like Romeo and Juliet, but it kind of had that kind of like overlapping theme.
Oh, so we have two winners.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that tragic conflict that propels this narrative. So with Romeo and Juliet, the deaths ultimately serve as this commentary for these stupid things that these families do of hatred, like the Hatfields and the McCoys. And it constrains in society, and it places on these individual desires. Like, so it's kind of like when you're doing a storyline of the two people who shouldn't fall in love. That's done so many times in reading because Shakespeare set that precedence of like, these two should not be in love, but they are. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people take a spin on it, even if they don't realize they're doing it, because that narrative has been put out there by
But people love that narrative. So, you can always spin it in multiple different ways. So,
Yes.
Awesome.
All right. This has been a great episode. But so with that, we also want to kind of put out there to our listeners. Oh my gosh.
I want to add some conflict into this,
Conflict. Yeah. Man versus water bottle. All right. As I was saying, we want to encourage our listeners to share their own experiences with writing conflict, or inquire about some favorite examples of your own conflict in media. Like, share what stories besides Game of Thrones do you not like what they did? That'd be kind of interesting to see what our listeners like. Do you guys agree? Like, should we put a poll out there? Do you agree with the ending of Game of Thrones? We talk about that a lot.
And there's only one choice, though. No.
Right. Yeah, I should put that on there. Like, here's your question. Is it no? No, or no?
Yeah.
All right. So writing exercises, I'm going to put this out there. I would like to suggest that our listeners who are writers suggested like an exercise where you practice writing conflict in your stories. Brainstorm different types of conflicts with the characters that you're building that fit into your current projects. Like, just kind of do some stuff and like share what you're doing. So, and consider maybe giving us some insights that you've had struggles with and how you approach, and send this to our email. And our email is Jamie.
What
is our email, Jamie?
allwayswritepodcast@gmail.com.
Threw you on the
Yeah,
spot
you know
there.
what threw me off? I started thinking of 14 other emails. I was going to say admin at Vendera, but I was like, no, wait a minute. That's not it. allwayswritepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you would like to find more ways to follow us and see us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, not Apple Music, Apple Podcast, you can go to
allwayswritepodcast.com.
yes, and click on those little icons.
Yep.
All
Easiest
right.
way to find us anywhere.
Yes. All right. Thank you for listening. This has been a great episode. And until next time, always write and send us your love and follow and share. And I'm author Karisa DeLay, and
I am author Jaime Vendera, and we'll see you in the next episode.
thank you.